Okay, so hello and good morning. Welcome to the EduphoreIAS, the live Hindu analysis class. Today the date is 16th of October and we are starting with the today's Hindu. But before that, let us quickly have a look at the 14th of October, that is Saturday's questions, and then we'll be starting with our discussion. First of all, Operation Ajay, the first question was recently in news is related to. So Operation Ajay is related to, this was the easier question, evacuation of Indians from Israel. Fine. Amidst the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. The second question, Saudi Arabia has recognized that peace and stability in the region are not possible without Palestinian interests being addressed. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि जब तक पैलेस्टीनियन कॉज जो है वो एड्रेस नहीं होता, उनके डिमांड द लेजिटिमेट डिमांड उनको मीट नहीं की जाती, तब तक कहीं ना कहीं वी कैन सी कि जो एक सस्टेनेबल या लॉन्ग टर्म जो पीस की बात की जा रही है वो इस रीजन में, वेस्ट एशिया में स्पेशली, हमें देखने को शायद ना मिले. ठीक है. सो एक हमने आर्टिकल डिस्कस किया था ऑन द एडिटोरियल पेज ऑफ द हिंदू ऑन सैटरडे, एंड दैट आर्टिकल वाज अ वॉर दैट एंड्स द सऊदी इजराइल नॉर्मलाइजेशन प्रोसेस. फाइन. First of all, you should have this at least this idea that even before this, some Arab and Israel, because Arabs are mostly Muslim populations and Israel of course a Jewish majority country. So somewhat इन दोनों के बीच में historically ही इनके relations अच्छे नहीं रहे हैं, but over the time relations को improve करने की कोशिश की गई है. सबसे पहले इसमें एक अब्राहम अकॉर्ड का जिक्र आता है, दैट इज 2020 में कंक्लूड कराया गया था. ट्रम्प उस टाइम पे, मिस्टर ट्रम्प जो है प्राइम प्रेसिडेंट होते थे यूएस के. फाइन. सो उनके टेन्योर में ये एक काफी बड़ी अचीवमेंट थी उनकी. सो अब्राहम अकॉर्ड के थ्रू क्या हुआ कि इजराइल ने अपने रिलेशन जो है वो नॉर्मल किए हुए थे. यूएई, बहरीन, देन यू हैव मोरक्को, सूडान एंड सो. फाइन. देयर आफ्टर देन दिस नॉर्मलाइजेशन पीस प्रोसेस एक्चुअली is going on between it's an ongoing process between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But somewhat, this Hamas attack on Israel, the brutal attack on Israel on the 7th of October, somewhat has derailed this Israel and Saudi normalization process. Fine. So this is what the article is all about. So again, the question is over 10 markers. So following the same structure, IBC, that is intro, body and conclusion. Your intro should not be more than 3 to 4 lines, since the question is of 4 marker, this 10 marker. Fine. So of course you can give this introduction with of course that as Hamas launched its lethal attacks on Israel on October 7, the assault has formally overturned Israeli efforts supported by the United States to promote a normalization of relations with Arab states without conceding anything to the Palestinians. Fine. So एक रीजन ये भी है कि कहीं ना कहीं हमास को ये लगने लगा था कि जो पैलेस्टीनियन इश्यूज हैं उसको कहीं ना कहीं कि पैलेस्टीन की डिमांड है कि सेपरेट नेशनहुड उसको दी जाए, रिकग्निशन दी जाए. सो कहीं ना कहीं जो कॉज है पैलेस्टीनियन कॉज, उसको कहीं ना कहीं बैक बर्नर पे कहीं ना कहीं बैक सीट ले चुका है ये मुद्दा. एंड इसलिए ये दिस इज द राइट टाइम कि अटैक करके हम जो है जो सिंपैथी है वो अरब नेशंस स्पेशली सऊदीज एंड ऑल इनकी हम गेन कर सकते हैं. एंड देयरफॉर दिस इज द राइट टाइम टू अटैक इजराइल. फाइन. इन ऑर्डर टू डिरेल दिस पीस प्रोसेस. ठीक है. एंड टू somewhat put pressure over the international community, particularly the West Asia and the Arab Muslims population, Arab countries, that again start the or acknowledge and recognize the demands of Palestinian. Fine. So therefore this is the case. So this much 3 to 4 lines will be sufficient for your introduction. After that, the body part of your answer. So of course, first major heading here you need to make is US backed diplomacy. Fine. Under this you can mention 2-3 points briefly. Then the second major heading should be Saudi-Iran ties. Fine. Again here you can mention 2-3 brief points briefly. And then finally the third heading should be the Palestinian interest in focus again after this attack. Fine. So this would be the third major headings for your answer. And under this as well you need to mention 2-3 points briefly. And finally you can conclude that again, regardless of USA's wishes, there is no question of Saudi Arabia accommodating the Americans on oil prices or diluting its comprehensive strategic ties with China the way US wants actually. So they exemplify its assertion of strategic autonomy and are an integral part of its quest for diverse, multifaceted, and substantial ties across Asia. Prompting the Palestinian cause will now form an important part of this foreign policy of Saudi Arabia or foreign policy approach of the Saudi Arabia. Fine. So this should be the conclusion. Last 2-3 lines of your conclusion for this question. So that's it about the 14th of October, the Saturday's questions. Let us start with the today's Hindu analysis. So we have lots of things to discuss today. Fine. So I'll be covering majority of the things. So let us quickly go to the first page or the front page, because from there we get the idea that what we all need to cover. Fine. Okay, so here we have first, you can see the conflict and Nusibe's analysis. So Nusibe is who is Nusibe and what this article is all about. So it's a conflict and of course about Israel-Hamas divide or war. So we'll be discussing this, the lead article on the today's editorial. And then you see here Israel readies for attack as million people evacuate from Gaza. Fine. So now Israel is preparing for a ground operation, fine, in Gaza. New investments slowed again in Q2 of 2023-24 according to the survey. So this is not a good sign, fine, and rest is politics. So let us not go into that. Here we have city page from Delhi. So those from Delhi, please do have a look at it. Other people can skip it unless and until there is not anything important. Okay, from the sports page. So on a sports page, we generally see lots of politics. Fine. So fine. So no need to waste time here. Okay. Okay. Here we have the article I was talking about, the Israel-Hamas conflict and the Nusibeh Nusibeh's analysis. So okay, so we'll be focusing today more on this Nusibeh's analysis. Who is this person and what is his importance in especially this this ongoing war, or especially in the Palestinian this state. So we'll be discussing all about, but first of all, the Israel-Hamas conflict. So excuse me. So I hope all of us are aware of this fact, what's going on between Israel-Hamas, and we have discussed this thing earlier as well. Fine, we are discussing this subsequently from the last 1 week because this is an ongoing thing from the 7th of October itself. So therefore, let us not waste much of the time here, but quickly go to the Nusibeh's analysis. But first of all, a total failure of Israel intelligence. Of course, this has been because formidable intelligence agency, invincible intelligence agency that Israel have, or technology, highly, this technologically rich country. But even after that, Hamas attacked, and not that, this was a lethal, brutal, you can say, and of course, with a lightning speed, the Hamas attacked, and that attack took place simultaneously on the 3 fronts, that is land, sea, and air as well. Fine, paragliding. So therefore, it was somewhat, you can say, surprising for every, not just Israeli intelligence agency itself, but for the international community as well. Fine. And of course, under in retaliation, Israel has declared war on Hamas, and of course, is undertaking operations in Gaza for that same thing. So let us start first of all with, who is this person? Nusibeh. So Nusibeh is like Gandhi, an eminent Palestinian especially. So he is a Palestinian Gandhi, you can say, eminent Palestinian intellectual activist and a true Gandhian. If there is one in the world, wrote an extraordinary book that was published in 2011 called what is a Palestinian state worth? What is a Palestinian state worth? He argues that the state is for the people and not the other way around. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि स्टेट जो है लोगों के लिए, लोगों की भलाई के लिए, and not the other way around. The state's primary duty is to protect its citizens and to enable them to develop, prosper, enjoy family life, and move around freely within the country. However, the governing groups in the government, primarily interested in remaining in power, generate a strong patriotic fervor to the extent of stimulating the people to sacrifice their life to save the country. Yes, so this is what the ultra nationalistic feeling is called, or chauvinism. कि जो पार्टी है, जो भी सरकारें हैं, गवर्निंग ग्रुप्स हैं इन द गवर्नमेंट, प्राइमरली इंटरेस्टेड इन रिमेनिंग इन पावर, कि हमने कुर्सी पे बैठे रहना है, generate a strong patriotic fervor amongst the citizens or the people, and even make them to sacrifice themselves for the nation, right? For their own interests, self-interest. But this is important, and this is important. If the state knows that it will not and cannot achieve its objective and still perseveres in its objective, it will be acting immorally and unethically, according to Nusibeh, right? So this is what the Palestinian, or you can say, अगर आज के टाइम में किसी गांधीयन की बात करें तो he might be labeled as a true Gandhian, right? What right does the state have to willfully sacrifice so many lives for a cause it knows is untenable? It would be obligatory for the state to dilute its war objective and to seek compromise, right? कि ultimately देखो सीधी सी बात है कि who is at the lost in this war or any war going across the world? Not the politicians, not the leaders, but ultimately the major fallout is at the level of the citizens. आम लोग, आम जनता मरती है, ठीक है? तो उस चीज का ध्यान रखना जरूरी है. Nusibeh further says in his analysis, in the case of ongoing war, would suggest that both the Israeli government and the Hamas know that they simply cannot achieve their respective goals. Hamas is conscious that the state of Israel can never be destroyed or pushed into the sea, as they say. Israel equally knows that the ideology behind Hamas cannot be eliminated, nor can Hamas as an entity can be eliminated. Thus, both sides are behaving immorally and unethically, pushing ordinary citizens into the jaws of death. Right? So this is what, according to him. Okay, so on the Kashmir issue, can Nusibeh's logic be applied to the Kashmir problem as well? So successive governments in India and the Pakistan have known that they cannot achieve their maximalist objectives, capturing Pakistan-occupied Kashmir on the Indian side and capturing the whole of Kashmir or at least the valley on the Pakistani side. ठीक है, सो जनता को गुमराह किया जाता है कि हाँ जी कल ही हम ऐसे करेंगे, उस एक साइड कुछ और कहती है, दूसरी साइड कुछ और करती है, और हम बस उसी में खुश रहते हैं. ठीक है, तो इस चीज का ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है जनता के लेवल पे भी. अप्लाइंग Nusibeh's logic, persevering in these objectives therefore is immoral and unethical. Should not some compromise, perhaps along the lines of the 4-point formula worked out by both sides a few years ago, be revived and reconsidered seriously by both sides, that is on Pakistan by on Kashmir by Pakistan and India. Fine. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि इंडिया पीओके को अपने में मिला ले, या पाकिस्तान कहे कि हम वैली को कैप्चर कर लेंगे या पूरा कश्मीर को कैप्चर कर ले. इट्स नॉट feasible today, but of course they somewhat through a compromise and negotiations they can come out with a sustainable, you can say, this decision which can establish a long-term peace in the valley for the Kashmir. So similar instance or similar logic can be applied here as well. So in this sense this is important. Next article again important, and that is the world needs to stop taking water for granted. Yes, world, even at an individual level, we should even need to take water, to stop taking water for granted. Fine, हम भी घरों में देखते हैं टैप खोलते हैं खुला ही रह जाता है. Yeah, we don't care much for the water, fine, but ask from them who actually struggle a lot in finding even a glass of water for quenching their thirst. Fine, so then you get to know what is the worth of even a glass of water. Okay, so the world needs to stop taking water for granted. And why we are discussing this thing? Because today is the day for World Food Day, October 16th, and the theme for this year is water is life and water is food. Water zindagi bhi hai and food bhi hai. It calls for urgent action in managing water wisely. फाइन। अवेलेबिलिटी और लैक ऑफ वाटर हैज बिकम इवन मोर क्रिटिकल विद इंक्रीजिंग क्लाइमेट एक्सट्रीम्स, बिल्कुल ठीक बात है, because country faces severe challenges such as drought, floods, unseasonal rains, and prolonged dry spells. With less than 7 years left to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that is Agenda 2030, कि 2023 तक हमें 16 जो goals हैं उसको achieve करना है, ठीक है। There are total 17 goals, but 17 is the country will be cooperating with each other for achieving the 16 goals. Fine. So, SDGs, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, the IFAD, that is International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the United Nations World Food Prize Program, not prize, program, the UN's food agencies, these three agencies lay stress on the need to adopt innovative and collaborative approach for improved management, conservation, and availability of scarce water resources. एक बात है कि कम से कम पानी की जो अवेलेबिलिटी है वो रहे, फाइन, बिकॉज वाटर, फ्रेश वाटर की स्पेशली बात करें तो इट्स स्कार्स रिसोर्स। Water availability affects every aspect of human life, especially for food and nutrition security. For instance, about 60% of India's net sown area is rain-fed. About 60% rain-fed कि बारिश होगी तो फसल उगेंगी, ठीक है। तो कहीं ना कहीं ये डिपेंडेंसी बहुत खतरनाक है हमारे लिए, contributing to 40% of the total food production. However, rain-fed agriculture depends directly on water availability, and rain and soil moisture variations can severely affect food and nutrition security. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि अगर बारिश हो ही ना, जैसे हम देखते हैं, तो पानी सही मात्रा में मिले ना मिले, उससे कहीं ना कहीं सॉइल जो है एंड जो सॉइल मॉइस्चर है प्लस रेन एंड सॉइल मॉइस्चर वेरिएशन जो है वो कैन अफेक्ट सीवियरली फूड एंड न्यूट्रिशन सिक्योरिटी, फाइन। So there is an urgent need to adapt to climate change by promoting technologies and practices that make rain-fed production more resilient and sustainable. So इसलिए the need of hour is to adopt or promote more of the technologies and the practices which are more in line with such kind of practices. Sustainable water management is critical to address the impending food and nutritional security threats. In turn, irrigated agriculture accounts for 72% of global fresh water withdrawals, sometimes with lasting damaging effect on the sustainability of significant ecosystems such as seasonal river and deep aquifers. Of course, over the time आपने देखा कि ground water हम इतने एक्सट्रैक्ट कर चुके हैं कि ओवर द टाइम आप अगर लेवल ऑफ ग्राउंड वाटर देखोगे तो और नीचे जाते हैं, फाइन। सो कहीं ना कहीं एक्विफर रिचार्ज की बात करते हैं एंड ऑल। सो 72% इरिगेटेड एग्रीकल्चर अकाउंट्स फॉर 72% ऑफ ग्लोबल फ्रेश वाटर विथड्रॉल्स, फाइन। 72% फ्रेश वाटर को हम सिर्फ यूज करें किसके लिए? एग्रीकल्चर के लिए। Water and crop production. So decades of poor water management, misuse and pollution and the climate crisis have degraded freshwater supplies and ecosystem, adding to the vulnerability of small scale producers to climate shocks and land degradation. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है। Remember, it's not about कि fresh water availability कम है या scarce है, but even the biggest reason or the cause here is, which should be more, given more focus, and that is the management of water, management side of water. That is demand side of water, supply side of water, of course management side, कि हमें unnecessary जो wastage कर रहे हैं, जो हम misuse कर रहे हैं pollution की, जैसे हम जो हमारे rivers हैं like Ganges and all, so देखते हैं कि वहाँ पे industry की जो है direct जो है जो भी waste water है वो directly जाके उसमें मिल रही हैं, so of course polluting the river waters. So therefore इन चीजों पे हमें ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है, देने की जरूरत है। About 40% of the planet's total land area is degraded, leaving farmers with less productive land. Small scale farmers who make up more than 80% of farmers globally. Even in India, smaller marginal farmers are in the range of 86 to 87%, which is the major chunk. And of course, the fragmented land somewhat make their product, the production or the produce less attractive, are especially affected as they often lack access to finance, technology and education to maintain a level of production that can sustain their livelihood. बिल्कुल छोटी बात है, जो छोटे छोटे किसान हैं वो इन लेवल हाई टेक टेक्नोलॉजी को अडेप्ट नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है, इरिगेशन पर्पसेस के लिए, या फाइनेंशियल इश्यूज क्रेडिट रिलेटेड इश्यूज फेस करते हैं। तो एक्सट्रीम वेदर इवेंट्स एंड वेरिएबिलिटी इन द रेनफॉल स्पेशली और वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी आर सिवियरली अफेक्टिंग एग्रीकल्चर प्रोडक्शन। ऑफ कोर्स अगर रेन फेड आपकी एग्रीकल्चर है तो जो वेरिएशन होगी, वेरिएबिलिटी होगी, वो सीजनैलिटी के बेस पे हो या अवेलेबिलिटी के बेस पे हो, तो कहीं ना कहीं उसमें हमें जो है दिक्कत होगी उस स्टेज पे। The government of India has assessed the impact of climate change in 2050 and 2080 using climate projections and crop simulation models. So this is important. Without adaptation measures, rain-fed rice yields in India are projected to reduce by 20% by 2050 and by 47% in 2080 scenarios. तो देख सकते हो कि अगर rain-fed rice yields की हम बात करें इंडिया में तो we are going to have register this reduction in our overall yields by 20% in 2050 and almost 47% in 2080. अगर हम present scenario को देखें तो while irrigated rice yields are projected to decline by 3.5% in 2050 and 5.5% in 2080 scenarios. Fine. Wheat yields की भी बात करें तो इसमें भी हम reduction देखने की मिलेगी by 19.3% and 14.40% for the same years. Fine. While kharif maize yields could decline by 18% and 23% for the same years. During the same years, the FAO in Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka, Himachal and Maharashtra is piloting a crop forecasting framework and model incorporating climate, soil characteristics and marketing information to aid rain-fed farmers in making informed decisions contributing to food security. So FAO जो है Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations, Special Agency of UN, तो कहीं ना कहीं इसने आंध्रा देख सकते हो स्टेट का नाम याद रखना, कर्नाटका, हिमाचल एंड महाराष्ट्र में एक पायलट प्रोजेक्ट चला रही है फॉर forecasting framework and model incorporating climate, soil characteristics and making market information to aid rain-fed farmers in making informed decisions contributing to the food security. Right? So, अगर ये successful रहता है तो further this can be stimulated or it can be applied this can be used in other parts of the country as well. So further, in this context, the WFP, that is World Food Programme, supports soil and water conservation, the building or fixing of irrigation canals, dams, ponds, dikes, as well as flood barriers through food assistance in exchange for labor. So you can see कि World Food Programme, जैसे हमने 3 एजेंसीज की बात करी थी यहाँ पे, तो तीनों ही अपने अपने लेवल पे कहीं ना कहीं कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं. IFAD supports Indian states in leveraging the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act scheme through safeguards during design and planning and encouraging participatory institutional development. IFAD ensures that micro irrigation infrastructure is environmentally and socially sustainable and financially viable. So IFAD is ensuring कि microfinance और micro irrigation infrastructure जो है वो environmentally and socially sustainable हो and financially viable. So climate change adaptation. The FAO also supports the sustainable transformation of agri-food system and climate smart agriculture practices to improve the water use efficiency. It supported the farmer water school program in Uttar Pradesh, which helped smallholder farmers. At the same time, the Andhra Pradesh, so ऊपर हम देख चुके हैं नाम 3-4, ठीक है, आंध्रा, यूपी, हिमाचल एंड ऑल. तो यहाँ पे FAO जो है वो हेल्प कर रही है स्टेट्स की. Ground water system project reached to this much. So similarly, IFAD has enshrined climate change adaptation in its core strategies. It set ambitious targets in terms of leveraging climate financing, mitigate climate change by addressing the adverse impacts of agriculture and helping farmers to adapt to the increasing volatility of weather conditions. So you can see कि ये जो तीनों ही मेन एजेंसीज हैं यूएन की, ये तीनों ही रिस्पेक्टिव स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया में कहीं ना कहीं अपने पायलट प्रोजेक्ट्स के थ्रू इस डायरेक्शन में वाटर कंजर्वेशन, प्रिजर्वेशन, इरिगेशन एंड ऑल कहीं ना कहीं इस चीज में हेल्प कर रही है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, IFAD सपोर्टेड प्रोजेक्ट्स इन महाराष्ट्र, ओडिशा, कर्नाटका, उत्तराखंड, नागालैंड, मिजोरम इनकॉर्पोरेट क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट सीड वेराइटीज and crops including millets and train farmers in climate sensitive agricultural practices and soil management to cope with increased water stress. The WFP is collaborating with the government of Odisha to develop solutions for smallholder farmers, focusing on women. The goal is to enhance resilience through solar technologies, establish community-based climate advisory services to help manage climate impacts, and to promote a millet value chain that reduces water usage and improve. The UN is celebrating International Year for Millet this year, 2023. So therefore, the focus is on millet because millet is something, a type of crop which doesn't need much of the water for its overall production. Right? Steps needed to achieve global food and nutrition security. Political commitments is needed as much as concrete investment. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि लीडर्स के लेवल पे हमें कमिटमेंट की जरूरत है. The needed policies and investment must promote innovative and proven technology that allow farmers to increase their productivity. This is a first solution, first step. Innovative and proven technology जो है उसको promote करने की जरूरत है. Second is adapt to climate change and become more resilient to shocks. Third is environmentally and socially sustainable and financially viable irrigation and water projects or water management strategies needed. Reduce their climate footprint of agricultural production as well as biohazards and environmental pollution. So this could be the fourth. Bring sanitation and drinking water supplies closer to rural households. Adopt efficient food and water recycling strategies. And strengthen institutional arrangements and capacities. So 5, 6 points for sustainable and equitable water regulations, management, access, and ownership. So all of these 6, 7 steps can be taken or can be accounted for further, preservation or conservation of water. The UN's Food Agency work closely with the Government of India and state governments on innovations such as solar for resilience, secure fishing, and revival of millets for renewable energy promotion, food security, and nutrition. This is, you can see, a very, very good piece of article, of course, and you have idea about how the UN agency is promoting or taking steps and helping the Indian states and the Government of India itself in this direction in order to conserve the one of the scarcer resource, that is water. Fine. And further we have discussed 6, 7 steps that can be taken by the governments, respective governments. This article is about closing the gender pay gap in the workforce. We have lots of inequality, especially, or the gender gap, gap at the level of genders in terms of payment or the salary in simple terms. So this article is in the background of this year's Nobel Prize, which has been given in economics, especially to the professor, you can say, Claudia Goldin. Fine. So she has worked in this field especially, and she has been awarded Nobel Peace Prize for this thing only this year. Fine. That is women's participation in the workforce. Fine. So closing the gender gap. When women were missing from the labor force, that was because they were home caring for children, and when they were paid less than men, that was because they had lower education than men, or so said the economic orthodoxy, including theories popularized by the 1992 Nobel Prize winner Gary Becker. A few feminist economists and sociologists protested, but their voices were drowned out until Claudia Goldin stood on the podium as the president of the American Economic Association in 2013-14 and argued that answer to the solution of missing and underpaid women did not lie at home, but rather in the market. So of course, this gap is not because of the home reasons, but because of the reasons in the market, segment, especially, or the labor force itself. So a name and a voice. So of course, this is about the Claudia Goldin, the 2023 Economic Nobel Prize winner, has spent half a century giving a name and voice to their problems. Fine. So this is about Professor Goldin. So Professor Goldin argued that this disadvantage is due to their inability to take on jobs that involve all-consuming responsibilities. Parental responsibilities make it difficult for the women to take on jobs requiring long hours and irregular work schedules. The private equity partner who saw the deal through. So one of the reasons she is giving is the parental, responsibilities and the home's duties or responsibilities of the women, which stops them from taking active part in the labor force. Fine. Another is, while women need not be the ones choosing this slow track, gender ideologies often prompt couples to assign women to take over extra family duties, while men remains free to concentrate on their careers. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है. Professor Goldin blamed this inequality on greedy work that demands extraordinary efforts from workers, rewarded with high salaries, big bonuses, stock options, and fast promotions. Rising income inequality leads couples to forego gender equity within the households and concentrate on increasing family income via specialization. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि rising income inequality जो है that leads couples to forego gender equity even at home. Fine. So and they concentrate on increasing family income via specialization. ठीक है कि कहीं ना कहीं rising income inequality जो है, because of, let us say, they are helpless at the level of their individual level, or especially at the अगर home level की household level की बात करें, तो कहीं ना कहीं it forces this inequality, rising income inequality, कि go and work more. Fine. Her solution to this dilemma is restructuring a workplace that does not rely on heroic efforts, has moderate work hours and predictable schedules. So this is her solution. In some ways, Professor Goldin work dovetails with that of Juliet Score, who argued in her book The Overworked American that it was far more beneficial to companies to hire 2 workers who worked longer hours than 3 workers who worked regular hours since it reduces costs such as health insurance. Fine. तो कहीं ना कहीं देख सकते हो कि एक अनदर जो राइटर है उन्होंने क्या कहा कि दो ऐसे दो को हायर करना जो लॉन्गर आवर्स काम करें बेटर है, बजाय कि 3 को हायर करो जो रेगुलर आवर्स रूटीन वर्क में काम करे. So of course this was against what Professor Gordon says. Further, she is saying that I suspect that Indian workers in Bengaluru is struggling to keep up with the Zoom calls at 9:30 p.m. to confer with their American counterparts, arriving in the office at 9 a.m. while helping their children with their algebra homework will relate to this. Of course, timing issues and all. Although women's employment rates in India remain low, secular changes suggest that there is no reason why this must continue. Building on Professor Goldie's observation, the growth of the service sector should offer jobs for the women that are not offered by the manufacturing sector. Rising education should increase their employability, and declining fertility should free up women's time. But how can we take advantage of these fortuitous circumstances? So all of these has been painted in this mentioned in a good light, you can say, but somewhat the things need to be changed, and that is the reshaping the environment. Especially at the level of environment, we need to change the things. While increased male participation in household work and child care would help, we must also find ways of reshaping both the work and social environment so that they are conducive to developing a work-life balance for both men and women. Of course, we need not just to focus on the women, but of course we need to even focus on the equality of men as well, because of course अगर एक को आप फ्री करके दूसरे की अगर आप रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बढ़ा रहे हो, so of course this is going to again hamper in the long run. So this means having work structure that are respectful of workers' time and do not emphasize very long work hours. This makes both social and economic sense. So Stanford economist John Pankeville has shown that longer working hours do not mean more productivity, and in some jobs lead to increased mistakes and injuries. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है. Longer hours is not guaranteed to the productivity. But rather the truth is, देखना जब कम टाइम होगा आपके पास तो प्रोडक्टिविटी आपकी बेटर निकल के आती है, right? But if we need to rein in the greedy workplace, we also need to rein in a variety of institutions that demand more and more of our time. This includes schools that rely on parents to supervise homework and urban development that place homes far from workplaces. Until we can create these supportive institutions, it will be hard to write the last chapter for the grand gender convergence in the labor market, outcomes that Claudia Goldwyn advocates for so fires. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि जब तक हम इंस्टीट्यूशन के लेवल पे, जब तक हम एनवायरनमेंट के लेवल पे, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लेवल पे काम नहीं करेंगे, it would be a difficult task, or you can say it would be a kind of illusion for us to imagine this kind of equality at present. So next is Israel, Hamas and the laws of war. So what are the laws of war mentioned in this? So under what condition or when can countries use force in their international relations? So this is known as jus ad bellum in legal parlance, regulated by United Nations Charter. Fine. So what is it exactly? So what are the laws of war? First is jus ad bellum, regulated by the United Nations Charter. Second, how is war to be fought? That is, what military actions are permissible, and this is known as jus in bello. Fine. So first is under what conditions or when can countries use force in their international relations? This is known as jus ad bellum. And second is what military actions are permissible? This is known as jus in bello. Assuming a country is justified under the UN Charter to use force, it still must ensure that it satisfies jus in bello obligations. Justification to use force does not relieve a country for its obligation to use such force in accordance with the international law. Fine. So this is something which Israel need to take care of. Do the laws of war apply to the ongoing military conflict? Yes, of course it does implies. And what about civilian killings? The primary objective of IHL is that during an armed conflict, a distinction is always made between combatants and civilians. So of course, need to be very much careful on the part of civilians. Fine. Combatants, war parties can only attack combatants and military targets, not civilians and civilian objects. Fine. So देख सकते हो कि इजराइल जो गाजा में जो लोग रह रहे थे, उनको जो सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन, उनको साउथ ऑफ गाजा जो है वो कह रही है जाने को, और कहा भी है कि आप लोग निकल जाओ वहां से, बिकॉज टारगेट इज नॉट द पीपल ऑफ द सिविलियंस ऑफ गाजा, रादर द Hamas, that is militant or the terrorist group operating from Gaza. Okay, So the how of using force or the law of war is known as international humanitarian law, remember, which provides the rules that must be followed during an ongoing conflict or armed conflict. The primary objective of IHL, that is international humanitarian law, is that during an armed conflict, a distinction is always made between combatants and civilians. Okay? And war parties can only attack the combatants and not to the civilians. That's it about this. Next is the United Nations approved Kenya-led security mission to Haiti. So what is the purpose of multinational security mission and why was there a delay in deployment? So what's going on currently? So you can see somewhat United Nations Security Council has approved international intervention in the form of foreign security mission led by Kenya to restore security and protect critical infrastructure and control spiraling violence in the Haiti country. Haiti has experienced a surge in violence over the past year as armed groups took control of large parts of the country, including the capital, that is Port-au-Prince. Okay, so civilian kind of strife or conflict जो है civil war kind of situation देखने को मिली है यहाँ पे Haiti में, because यहाँ के armed group जो है they had taken the control of on the larger parts of the country. And while the US has made it clear that it won't send its troops, it has pledged $100 million in support like intelligence, communications, airlift operations and medical aid. ठीक है, तो यूनाइटेड नेशन पीस कीपिंग फोर्स जिसको हम बोलते हैं पीस कीपिंग मिशन, उसके अंडर में ये जॉइंट मिशन जॉइंट सिक्योरिटी जो है वो भेजी गई है, बट दिस हैज बीन लेड बाय द केनिया. फाइन, तो इस चीज़ का ध्यान रखना. Of course, the purpose is to restore security, protect critical infrastructure and control the spiraling violence. Fine. तो इस चीज़ का बस ध्यान रखना कि न्यूज़ में क्या चल रहा है इससे रिलेटेड. Let us quickly move to the next important things. So here the study estimates count of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones जैसे आप बोल देते हो required for the 3 services. So Indian government is actually under Chief of Defence Staff General, that is Anil Chauhan ji, has ordered another study of the use of armored helicopters by the armed forces. So of course the need or the study for the total number of the requirement is underway. That's a good thing for all the 3 forces. India against all forms of terrorism, says by our speaker Om Birla ji. Next is Sri Lanka moves towards RCEP, Bangladesh in queue. Okay, we have not joined yet RCEP. What exactly the RCEP? So 4 years after India walked out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, neighbors Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are now considering their chances of membership in the 15-nation trading bloc. Fine. So Sri Lanka has already applied to join the RCEP. Fine. Because Sri Lankan president is visiting China for the Belt and Road Initiative Forum meeting actually, or the summit. The Bangladesh government, whose commerce ministry has recommended joining the RCEP, is expected to take a final call. Fine. So our neighbors joining, so इस चीज़ पे हमें ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत होगी. चाइना ने अभी बेल आउट भी किया कहीं ना कहीं. IMF जो कि लोन की बजाय चाइनीज बीजिंग में जो बैंक है एक्सिम बैंक, वो श्रीलंका को लोन दे रही है. सो ऑफ कोर्स a number of things going on in their bilateral relations. So rethink the decision. इंडिया ने इस टाइम पे वॉकआउट इसलिए किया था बिकॉज दिस वाज चाइनीज लेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बेसिकली. एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस और भी रीजन है, जैसे इससे हमारे न्यूजीलैंड इसमें है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया है, तो इसमें हमारी जो डेयरी फार्मर्स है उन्होंने भी प्रोटेस्ट किया था बिकॉज दे आर द नॉन फॉर दे आर द डेयरी कंट्रीज स्पेशली न्यूजीलैंड एंड ऑस्ट्रेलिया. So they can flush or you can say they can dump their own product, this dairy products in Indian market. So उससे हमारी जो dairy like cooperative sectors हैं, for example अमूल, वेरका and so on, इनको काफ़ी नुकसान हो सकता है, या हमारे farmers जो है उनको भी नुकसान देखने को मिल सकता है. तो इसलिए कहीं ना कहीं इस चीज़ से पुल आउट किया था इंडिया ने. You can see कि while India was a founder member of the RCEP grouping, Prime Minister announced that India would pull out of the talks in 2020 owing to the concerns over mobility in services and fears of Chinese goods flooding the market, as well as the objections raised by the domestic agriculture sector and small businesses. While India has been invited to return to the RCEP meetings on several occasions, the government has not yet indicated that it would consider a review. Right? So this is the issue, major factors why we pulled out of this block. Okay, next is, again you have politics here only. Politics. Center likely to raise age of retirement of scientists to 65 years from the current 60 years. And MS Gill Saab, former poll panel chief, former CC, chief economic on this chief election commissioner, especially economic, had passed away. He happened to be the minister of state as well during the prime ministership of Manmohan Singh, and therefore काजीरंगा सेंचुरी रीओपन्स विद ट्रिब्यूट टू ब्रिटिश एरा ऑफिसर. काजीरंगा है कहाँ पे? सबसे पहले आपको पता हो आसाम में. फाइन. नॉन फॉर द basically Kaziranga National Park and Tiger Reserve reopened on Sunday, and this is known for especially the famous for what? Yes, so this is your homework. Mention in the comment section that Kaziranga National Park Tiger Reserve तो पता ही है किस लिए फेमस होगा, but Kaziranga is famous for what? असम में सबसे ज़्यादा population. Let me give you this clue. Railways develops anti-freeze flushes and fuel tanks for journeys in Jammu and Kashmir. The Chenab Bridge is a part of the Udhampur Srinagar Baramulla railway link project. So ये देख सकते हो काफी टाइम से कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रही थी. And finally, इसने डेवलप किया anti-freeze flushes and fuel tanks for journeys in Jammu and Kashmir. So railway is doing wonderful job from the last few years. Because क्यों freeze anti freeze हमें क्यों जरूरत है? Because when snowfall happens and all, of course, so it poses a unique challenge to the railways in maintaining water and fuel in liquid form in sub-zero temperatures during the winters. So therefore we need such kind of anti freeze this flushes and techniques. Further, then we have the world page here, and Blinken raises Hamas issue with the Saudi leader during West Asia tour. Then US warns of the prospect of Iran getting engaged in the war. Fine, because it has been alleged that somewhat Iran has supported this support. Of course, it supports Hezbollah operating from Lebanon. नाम आप लोगों ने जरूर सुना होगा during ongoing this conflict. And of course, Hamas के बारे में भी यही कहा जा रहा है, कहीं ना कहीं इस लार्ज स्केल पे, इतने बड़े स्केल पे अगर ऑपरेशन कर पाया हमास, तो कहीं ना कहीं अटैक कर पाया इसराइल पे, तो इसके पीछे ईरान का बहुत बड़ा हाथ है. ठीक है, तो पे ध्यान देने की जरूरत है. पाकिस्तान चाइना टू इंक डील्स अंडर CPEC ड्यूरिंग काकर्स विजिट. ओके, काकर इज द एक्टिंग प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान. तो RCEP फिर से. अजरबैजान प्रेसिडेंट रेजेस नेशनल फ्लैग इन काराबाग कैपिटल. सो फाइनली अजरबैजान ने जो नगोर्नो काराबाग जो चल रही थी डिस्प्यूट conflict over this territory between Israel, this Azerbaijan and Armenia. तो अजरबैजान ने कब्जा कर लिया उस पर. एंड देखना होगा कि आने वाले टाइम पे कैसे ये अनफोल्ड होती है चीज़ें. कीपिंग टैप ऑन दैट, बट फॉर द टाइम बिंग अजरबैजान हैज टेकन कंट्रोल ओवर दिस नगोर्नो काराबाग रीजन. Finally, we have, before we stop here, we have this last page, an important page from science, and that is new quantum engine does work by flipping the identity of atoms. So quantum physics, quantum mechanics, quantum dots, lots of things going on from the last few years, you can say, in the news. So physicists now have created a quantum engine. Quantum basically is qubits kind of things, quantum computers like. And here atom की बात करेंगे, subatomic particles की basically the quantum sense. So quantum engine to convert the energy difference between two quantum states of some atoms into work. The device adapts the principles of classical engine to the subatomic realm, allowing physicists to study the emerging field of quantum thermodynamics with more control. So all particles in the system are distinguished by 4 quantum numbers. You can say 4 quantum numbers here. Fine, like W1, this one, plus apart from this, you can see the 4 things we have here in a pictorial sense. You can see this. Apart from this, we have expansion, compression, and bosonization and fermionization. Now, what is fermionization? What is boson? What is this fermions? So we'll be discussing this. The values of the 4 numbers together tell us something about how much energy a particle has. And the exclusion principle states that in a given system, no 2 particles can have the same 4 quantum numbers. So exclusion principle क्या है, इसको ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है कि no 2, you can say no 2 particles can have the same 4 quantum numbers. जैसे कि हम बात करें कि there would be 4 quantum numbers. that is they can't occupy the same energy level. Physics needed a way to convert some particles from being boson to being fermions. ठीक है, so boson और fermions क्या है पहले तो हम ये देखेंगे. In the early 2000s, researchers found that if a collection of fermions were cooled almost to absolute zero and then prodded to interact with each other using a magnetic field, they could be made to behave like a bosons. जैसे हिग्स बोसॉन का नाम आपने सुना होगा, गॉड पार्टिकल के नाम से भी जाना जाता है. The quantum engine is still a proof of concept. Researchers have demonstrated that their design can be used to force a bunch of atoms to cyclically release energy as they are switched between bosonic and fermionic states. The researchers needed to figure out how this energy can be moved from inside the trap to system on the outside. So this is all about research thing that is going on. So what exactly are the fermions and this bosons? ये हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है यहाँ से कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट जानना. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इज Pauli's principle. So what is Pauli's principle? All subatomic particles can be classified as either fermions or bosons. Fermions क्या है? Fermions are the building blocks of matter and bosons are particles that carry the forces acting between them. So fermions are the building blocks of the matter while the bosons are the charged particles, you can say, or the particles that carry the forces acting between them. Fine. So when a bunch of particles are cooled to a very nearly absolute zero so that their quantum nature comes to the fore, they would all like to behave or have the lowest energy possible, but they can't, and this is known as the Pauli's exclusion principle. Exclusion, the two sets of the atom, these particles cannot have the same level of energy or the charge. Fine. Further, fermionic energy. तो fermions हैं क्या देख लिया हमने. इससे एनर्जी की बात करें, fermions to boson and back. तो क्लासिकल इंजन की हम बात कर चुके हैं, दैट कन्वर्ट हीट इनटू वर्क. ये ध्यान रखना, क्लासिकल इंजन्स कन्वर्ट हीट इनटू वर्क. फॉर एग्जांपल इंटरनल कंबशन इंजन्स, दैट इज कार में जो होती है, uses the heat released by the combustion of petrol or diesel to push a piston, fine, in order to fire the engine. So therefore the quantum engine, or what the researchers are calling a Pauli engine, has a similar set of 4 steps. First, the atoms collected in the trap are compressed and kept in a bosonic state. Second, the strength of the magnetic field applied on the atom is increased by a small amount. And further, you can say the third is the compression applied in the first step is eased. And fourth, the magnetic field strength is reduced to its original value. So ये 4 जो steps हैं वो हमारे लिए important है, ध्यान देने वाली बात है. ठीक है, because science and tech से generally UPSC जब prelims में questions पूछती है तो वो इस तरह के जो भी evolving field है, जो भी न्यूज में है, उससे क्वेश्चंस. कोई बहुत ज्यादा पीएचडी करने की जरूरत नहीं है, आपको बस इतना पता हो कि फर्मियंस क्या होते हैं, बोसॉन्स क्या होते हैं, Pauli's principle क्या है, एक्सक्लूजन प्रिंसिपल, Pauli's exclusion principle we say it, and what are the quantum engine, or what are the researchers calling a Pauli engine has a 4 steps. So what are these 4 steps? Fine. Quantum thermodynamics अब क्या है? So briefly ये भी पता हो, just observing the development and miniaturization of engines from macroscopic scales to biological machines, and further potential to single or few atom engines, it becomes clear that for particles close to the quantum regime, thermodynamics as we use in classical life will not be sufficient to understand the process or device. तो यहाँ से एक चीज क्लियर हो जाएगी कि thermodynamics is not going to be much useful in order to analyze the classical life, or to understand the process or devices related to the quantum. So there is a branch of physics called quantum thermodynamics, in which scientists study how thermodynamics emerges in quantum physical system, and some aspect of how to describe this thermodynamical aspect of quantum process are even theoretically not fully understood. Okay, so in application, first important application of our work, in my opinion, he says, is that we now have a platform where we can study such open questionable experimentally with a high level of control. So proof of concept. So अभी ये this somewhat एक research stage में है, experimental stage में है, and अभी ये research चल रही है, but अगर ये final proof हो जाती है and ये establish हो जाती है, well established, so of course this would be a big innovation, or this is going to actually revolutionize the engines, using the quantum engine phenomena. Fine, I see. जो currently हम internal combustion based engine देखते हैं vehicles में. Fine. So physicists in Germany have come up with a way to convert the energy difference between the 2 quantum states of a group of atoms into work, and the device adapts the principle of familiar classical engine to the subatomic realm. Fine, and it is the study The study is at the nascent field of quantum thermodynamics. Nascent means अभी initially अभी infant stage पे है ये study और experiment, but of course research is going on, और अगर ये validate हो जाती है, ठीक है, so of course it will revolutionize the this engine especially of the vehicle. So before we stop with this, let us have a look quickly at the today's this questions based on our analysis. First is the theme for the World Food Day this year is. So you need to pick out the correct after the 4. And second question is sustainable water management is critical to address impending food and nutrition security threats. You need to elaborate for 150 words for a 10-marker question. Fine. So that's it as far as today's Hindu analysis is concerned. If you have any query, anything, you can put the same in the comment section. Until then, take care, keep revising, and stay tuned for the tomorrow's Hindu analysis. Thank you.